show. You and I, we clearly know. Some days are high, some days are low. Everlasting love we can make. Come and share this great moment in my life. You know we can do that twice. Ultimately, I've got to live unashamed. Do you got it? Love, peace, happiness. Anybody got it? Love, peace, happiness. Y'all listen, I feel good. Everybody say, I feel good. Yeah, say, I feel good. Everybody say, I feel good. Yeah, come on, let's take it home. Hey, ultimately, I got to live unashamed. Hey, do you got it? I wanna know, do you got it? Love, peace, happiness. Love, peace, happiness. Everybody all over the world say love. Say love, peace, happiness. Oh, yeah. Say love, peace. What about the world can sing this, y'all? Yeah, yeah. Come on. Come on. Come on. Woo! Everybody having a good time tonight? Come on, man, God, doing real good. We gotta get out of here, but we love you. Love, peace, happiness. Everybody all over the world say love. Say love, peace, happiness.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to PickEd Speaks, where Black excellence speaks for itself. I am Dr. D. I am DeAndre. I'm here for a second episode with you. I am so grateful to each and every one of you for joining us tonight. Listen, thank you all so much for who joined us for our season opener with Darren D. Henson. It was an amazing experience, an amazing show, and I'm so glad to have had him. We talked a little bit afterwards. He had a great time. He enjoyed the conversation. He enjoyed the comments from you all. And so again, thank you for joining us. And there will be more amazing guests, including the guest that we have tonight, who I will talk about and introduce in one moment. I just want to take a time to, again, let you all know that we are here every Monday night at 7 o'clock. You did hear some music that came on right beforehand. That was music by Maurice Griffin, who actually will be on the show in a couple of weeks. I believe it's March 8th, I think it is. I think that's the show he's on, but be paying and looking for that. Be looking for him because he will be on the show talking about that song and other songs. And he'll be mentioning just some other things. And so, again, please make sure you're joining us for there. We have some other amazing people coming on. Now, I'm going to go ahead and mention this now because it's 2 weeks in advance. Now, many of you all have said over the course of these last 2 seasons, PickEd, what is it like? What was it like growing up with you? What was it like, engaging with you? Like, what was it? Who knows you best? Well, I have prayed about it. I've prayed hard about it. And I've listened to many of you all. So you may want to be tuned in to the March 1st show. That's the first Monday in March. I'm inviting my baby sister on live with me. Yes, I will have my sister on with me. She's going to give you all the dirt, the details about little me. What was it like growing up with me? But also we're going to have discussions about, being a uncle dad. And many of you all who are uncles and who are in your nieces and nephew lives understand this concept of being an uncle dad, right? So we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about the necessity of being present. We'll talk about, handling issues among siblings and what that actually looks like. The good, the bad, the ugly. Then, of course, at the very end, you'll find out how well do we really know each other, right? So we will do a game at the very end. So please tune in on March 1st to join me for a live with exclusive. I don't think it'll ever happen again. So you better make sure you watch it because it will probably never happen again. But you'll have my baby sister on who grew up, who I pretty much helped groom and I'm loving the young lady she turned into. And so she'll join me on March 1st. But tonight is a good night because of the fact that I have an amazing person joining me tonight. Now, not only is this person an educator, not only is this person a musician, a beautiful choral director. Not only is this individual an amazing mentor, amazing preacher and leader and activist, but I can also call him a friend. One thing about me, it's very hard for me to get to, and him too, it's very hard to get to friend status, right? It's very hard to get to friend status. And when you get us to friend status, you truly have connections and bonds for a lifetime. And it was befitting, especially in the month that we're in, as we were having discussion and talking, we were, talking about the guests and things of that nature. And he said, I'll be on. I said, duh. I don't know why I didn't even think about that. The last time I had him on, he was with a group of guys. Well, tonight he's by himself. And tonight I get to just ask him many good questions tonight about Black history, about education, and then anything that we may discuss that may roll in the conversation. We're very clear that we want to make sure that we don't bring our off the camera conversations on the camera. So we want to make sure that we're watching. But needless to say, I'm excited about this conversation. Please help me welcome my friend, my brother, my advisor, my idea bouncer offer. If that's even something, they say your rock. Please welcome to PickEd Speaks, Mr. R. Wayne Woodson. Mr. Woodson, really? You did do that smile, really?
Like I told you, this is weird for me to be on this side of the camera, so
that was you right, really. So again, I want you all to understand we're probably going to be very silly. We're very educated individuals. We're probably going to be very silly. So please know that this is going to be fun for me because I don't get to do this often where I get to be on this side because I've been on the other side at least 3 times for him. And he gets to ask me all these questions and I sent him a dissertation of questions for the show today. And so it should be a good conversation. But for those people who don't know you, Mr. R. Wayne Woodson. Tell them a little bit about who you are, and just tell them a little bit about what they need to know about R. Wayne Woodson.
That's always an interesting question. I mean, what do people need to know? Let's see. So, since the topic is today, I am the great grandnephew of Carter G. Woodson. That has been my legacy my whole life. I went to Morehouse. I did graduate study at the Lincoln Conservatory, and then I went to Capella. I did doctoral studies. So, I've been pretty much everywhere. I lived in Europe for a while. I decided I just packed my bags and moved to Austria. Random, but I did it. And, my work centers around education, leadership. A lot of my work is with HBCUs, and then students who are preparing for college, making sure that they have the tools and things that they need to be successful. So that's me.
And tonight, I want you all, those of you all who are watching, please make sure that you, again, if you don't have your friends right now who are watching, who have young people, who have, college students, or even just have students who are in high school who are prepping to go to college, get them on this show right now, because in the second half of this conversation, Arwen is going to talk about, again, we're going to talk about higher education. We're going to talk about some of those things that your young person needs to know and need to have to make sure that they are not only just successful, but well prepared to go on and what that looks like before you actually even go to that college arena. So we want to make sure you have them on there. And please make sure that they're getting a chance to listen to this conversation tonight, because I think this also is one of the, what I believe, issues that we run into sometimes is when we have platforms that discuss and talk about our lineage, our history. We don't spend enough time taking the opportunity to put our young people before people who actually can not only just speak truth to power, but actually have common sense while doing it, right? Because we see a whole lot of stuff on TV. They take a lot of their what they believe to be history from TV. And there's so much beyond that. And so I want to make sure tonight that you all are getting all that we have. So I'm gonna pull as much as I can from Woodson. I'm gonna see as much as he'll give, and then I'll know after a while, like, okay, we got to give it up. He's giving all he can. The guru has spoken. He has come from off the mountain, right? But I want to start because of the fact that you did mention, of course, being the great grandnephew of Carter G. Woodson, and you talk about that Woodson legacy and that history. What was it like carrying that name and that lineage, and knowing you come from that? What was it like growing up, coming and knowing that was the lineage you come from?
So first, hey, Dr. Kirk, love your show, Five Guys on Live. I watch it every week. So Woodson, honestly, and being fully transparent, when I was growing up, I hated it. And I do talk about this some in my book, because I did not have a normal childhood. So when most children were playing in the summers and doing things like that, my family was traveling. So we were traveling to school openings and library openings and monument dedications. I would be sitting in these 2-3 hour luncheons and banquets, bored out of my mind. And so my attachment at that time was, this whole thing is a waste of time. I would rather be doing anything else. It really wasn't until I got to undergrad at Morehouse that I really started understanding what that meant. At that time, the Journal for the Association of Study of African American History was at the institution. I took Black history classes for really the first time in my entire life, official classes. And it was funny, I'm looking in this book and I go, well, that's my uncle. And so it was really at that point, and I was grown at this point, that I really started to understand the importance. And now that is a great deal of my work. Now, interestingly, when I was younger, my father did Black history talks and talked about Carter G. Woodson, and they favor a lot. Mm-hmm. But for me, it wasn't until I was well grown that I really started understanding. And then since that time, of course, I'm the one that goes to the banquets and the dedications and all. So at this point, it is just innately part of who I am.
Mm-hmm. And with that, because a lot of, what was, I guess, now when you were in school, particularly in high school and even middle school, did people know that was your family, that people kind of understand? And then how did you have to, especially again, coming up from that and having to attend many of these different events and things of that nature, in grade school, did you have to defend certain discussions? Did you have to, correct certain discussions? Like, how was that actually being in grade school and experiencing Black History Month in school?
Okay, so let me start by saying I didn't go to primarily Black schools. It was not until high school, when I got to Renaissance High School in Detroit, that I was really at my first Black school. I went to J.W. Pepper in Oak Park, and at that time, it was predominantly Jewish. I did middle school at Shrine of the Little Flower Catholic School in Royal Oak, predominantly white. I could probably count the number of Black people at that school. So I didn't have opportunities for Black history. I don't really think in either institution it was really even celebrated. My family did stuff. It's in Detroit. We were really big on Kwanzaa and things. But growing up, I had no point of reference except when we went to events, because, it was not the big to-do that it is now. We're talking about the 70s. And it wasn't until 76 that it was even recognized by a president officially. And so I didn't really have to explain. And the reality is, most people my age didn't even know who Carter G. Woodson was. So, and we still have that issue now. If I mention them now in many circles, they're like, now, if I'm in academics or adults and I mention the miseducation of the Negro, then we're like, oh, okay. But most people then and now at that age don't have any point of reference to what it is. They have King and Malcolm X and Rosa Parks, but not the person who initially developed that field of study.
And that's interesting you say that, because of the fact that we hear a lot about, we talk about this lost concept of Black history, because I think we get so caught up in that one area of Black history, right? We think about, okay, we go to Africa, and then we go to civil rights, and then we go to Obama. But they don't really talk about the people, if you will, who truly made Black history what it is. Because it's not just those, and we honor and we celebrate those individuals, but it's so rare do you hear about individuals who are making contributions. And so it is kind of tiresome, if you will, when you hear that people don't really know about Carter G. Woodson. That it's deep. So my next question would be to you is, if Dr. Woodson was here today, what would be his intention for Black history, and do you think he would be okay with where it is?
So I have to start that by saying his original intent was not what we do now. Originally, we were supposed to study the history all year. That's 12 months. And then that week in February, we were supposed to celebrate what we had learned throughout the year. Somehow, when I guess became a federal holiday and we've done all these shifts, we have reversed the entire process. So I am sure that would be one of his areas of concern that he would really want to address, that, like people say, I'm Black all year. And that was his intent, that we study our history, because the reason he started doing it in the first place is because in graduate school, when he was, and all his degrees are in history, he has a doctorate from Harvard. When he was in grad school, they were studying American history and nothing about, at that time, the Negro race. So there was nothing Black involved at all. And when he asked the professor told him, well, we're not studying that because your people haven't done anything of note. And that's what shifted his career. So I think that he would have serious concerns with the fact that we have allowed ourselves to be relegated to being Black 1 month a year. So I know that would be a concern.
And, and it's so interesting that, and I hope you all caught that, because his intent wasn't to be a full year and to use that week to celebrate all of it. And I think and it's good to hear that, because I know people study it and people think about, but to hear, from, lineage, like, listen, that was not the intent. And I think people have, this, and I think that's why this concept of, again, it not being 28, but being a 365 thing. And you're actually, promoting that right now. You're actually doing work around that. Tell them a little bit about BH12.
So the BH Trail Initiative is really to return Black history to what it was originally intended. So we do that through policy, we do that through workshops, meetings. We're trying to get school systems to just incorporate it into regular history. The whole thing, and the 12 represents the 12 months of the year, that we should really be looking at doing that work, that celebration, that study for 12 months a year. And so that is what that initiative does, and it's one of the primary things that I work on a daily basis, because I think that we do need to establish the fact that we are Black all year, and that's important.
So one of the questions just came up. This is from one of the viewers and one of my former parents when I was an administrator, and I've had the opportunity and honor of mentoring and her sons. Her question says, so what platform do you introduce to adolescent men to introduce them to their heritage? Many strong Black men discuss all these programs, but so many are not aware of the education for a Black mind.
So that's a really good question. There are really no platforms per se, but there are people doing the work. So, I have lives regularly all year that provide a lot of information. There are speakers, there are other things, but there is not really a platform. I mentor, I think now I'm at like 45 young men from across the country, because I think that that's part of that work. And I think the best way to do it is to find a mentor in the area that can provide the correct information, not just somebody who's pro-Black, but somebody that really understands the information. So, I mean, and I do that right now. It's working great because everything's virtual. So I'm on a lot of virtual workshops. I just did a workshop with a school in New Orleans a couple weeks ago. So I think that's where we start. And getting them access, like Dr. PickEd said, there are living people that are part of our history. And so everybody does not have to be somebody that is deceased.
And I think the great other part about that is you have to understand that, history, we also have to be very careful about how we define history to our young people, because I think sometimes we categorize it, or we place history within this box. And we think that if it didn't happen in this, or if it wasn't in this, then it's not history. And there's so many lost historical figures that we miss, who played a major part of major events in this nation. We don't hear about, like, again, the Bayard Rustins, who was instrumental in the March on Washington, and worked heavily with Dr. King, but we don't catch those. We don't talk a lot. When we talk about dancing, we rarely hear about Alvin Ailey and his dance company, who made it possible for so many individuals. So we hear about, the Nutcrackers and all these things, but there's so many things. You all go watch, many of us go and see the Alvin Ailey Dance Company so often when we were allowed to go out there, and we see Revelations and we hear that. We have a living legend among us. We know one. We don't hear often about Uzi Brown or Wendell P. Whalum, those individuals who literally helped, Moses Hogan, who helped transform, Black music. And there's people who are still doing it. There's even young people right now who are still doing that. Go ahead.
Well, even with like Cicely Tyson just passed, she did more than Miss Jane Pittman.
Correct.
And so unfortunately, she's not here now, but we need to really get these people before it is too late for us to get that information, because the questions I have about her are not related to her acting. Mine are her as a person. You are a Black female trying to take over Hollywood, and you did it for almost a century. That's the conversation I want to have. I don't just want to talk about your movies.
Correct.
I want to talk about the struggle and how you did that, and how even with the degradation that you went through in your career, you kept doing it, because people are all enamored with Cicely Tyson now, but if you ever look at anything from early, she was not treated well.
Correct.
And so those are the types of things, there are a lot of people that are doing amazing things in this country.
Like, even when you think about like a Whoopi Goldberg, who is still living, who is, you have to ask those questions. Like, there was a while where she was able to cross over and she was the mainstream. And even though she wasn't viewed as what society classified as the pretty woman and the glorious woman, she was able to get into doors and get into areas that many Black individuals were unable to. And because of that, she has, multiple awards. When you think about Harry Belafonte, we know him for the music and everything else, but people really don't know the full activism side of that and how they were paying for individuals to get out of jail. The fact that here in Atlanta, we have so much history here. People don't know about Alonzo Herndon, who was the first Black millionaire, and his home that is here and his house is here. There's so much walking history. And so, these are these things. And so we talk about the platform, Shelly. I think, like as Wayne was saying, I don't think it's not necessarily a platform, but there are so many people who are doing the work. It's just our responsibility for us. It's our responsibility to elevate our voices. But in doing that, when we elevate our voices, because we don't have the bigger platforms like the Al Sharpes and others, does not mean that we don't have the goods. We don't have the stuff. So you have to still support the work that we're doing. When Arwin is going out there and he's having these conversations with his individuals, there should be, his lives should be packed. People should be running, and we have to support those methods. So I think that's the first thing that we have to do, is making sure that we're supporting methods and we're supporting each other. So, and I hope you all are taking notes. If you have questions, please make sure you're chiming in. Put the questions in the comments. We're definitely going to reach out to them. Listen, we have a quick break. We don't want to talk so much and get you all tired up. We're going to take a quick break. We will be right back after this, where we'll be back with more Pick Ed Speaks. We'll be right back. PickEd Speaks will be right back.
Are your students ready to succeed?
In a world of uncertainty, where it seems we are going through the motions of life with no direction, and our new norm and way of doing things have somewhat crippled the intimacy of our connections, while the government continues to transition. With time moving on, so are we at the For Better Futures Foundation, working with families in our community to redefine our norm, to engage our community through volunteerism, educational advancement, and family assistance. So, don't let time pass you by, but join the For Brighter Futures Foundation movement at www.forbrighterfutures.com.
All right, we are back. This thing will not come off the screen. I'm like, oh my God, it will come off the screen. So y'all have to also understand, when doing live, it may not always work in the manner in which you expect it to. So when we don't have big production studios, you have to do what you have to do. And so we're back live with, again, Arwin Woodson, talking about Black history and talking about where we stand. So I want to kind of push it just a little bit more, because we did kind of go into it. And I want to also delve into one area that we both are familiar with and we both love, which are HBCUs. You had the privilege and honor of serving in many capacities of an HBCU, and you've had the opportunity to watch and groom so many students. What can you dismantle, or can you kind of break down some of those myths or some of those rumors that people have about HBCUs? Things like you don't learn anything at HBCUs. You're not, as kids, young people leaving HBCUs aren't as prepared for the real world, or people who go to HBCUs couldn't get into other institutions. Could you dispel some of those myths and talk about what an experience at an HBCU could give a young person?
That's a really good question. I feel like I'm in a pageant or something. So there are a lot of myths. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of misconceptions, and unfortunately, a lot of that is perpetuated by us and not other people. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to me when I speak to my Black peers or people I meet, and they're like, "Oh, my child will never go to an HBCU." So that concerns me, and I like to always address that. But there are a lot of things. If we really look at the fact that all HBCUs have the same opportunities for academic programs that any other institution will have. And so that is critical for us to remember. So you can study anything at an HBCU that you can at a PWI. The other thing is the faculty are just as credentialed. We have accreditation agencies that mandate and oversee the academic rigor of institutions. It's the same standard for all of higher ed. So they are meeting the same criteria as any other HBCU. Now, there are some additional things. I was very fortunate, and I'm always excited when students go to HBCUs because a lot of extra learning happens that is not in the classroom. So we learn how to interact with people. We learn how to express who we are and our Blackness and our intelligence. You are in an environment where, for some students, it's the first time that they do not have to justify being Black. You know, you do have a more hands-on approach to the education process. You know, faculty know their students. Faculty go to their student events. It is, in most cases, even in some of our larger institutions like North Carolina A&T or North Carolina Central University or the Southern System in Louisiana, it is a family atmosphere where everyone on that campus is invested in you being successful. And I have gone to several PWIs. They are mostly invested in us completing degrees. And so there are major differences. And, you know, we need to remember that a majority of the people in our communities who doing the work, who are doctors, lawyers, educators, went to HBCUs. And sometimes we brush over that. I mean, look, the vice president is an HBCU grad. So there are a lot of things, and Stacey Abrams, who shifted Georgia and really aided that work, as a Spelman grad. So I think we need to, and I just had a meeting earlier, do a better job of narrating our own story.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, and we've talked about this. You know, I grew up predominantly in, you know, white schools. I was like one of 6 Black kids for the most part who went to my schools. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, you know, that's just the way it was. And my mother moved us in particular schools in the areas because of the fact that she wanted to make sure that we got the best education possible. But with that, it sometimes came with a price. And being the only Black kid, you know, in your class, and then of course having other Black kids who were there, but them also still struggling, trying to learn their own identity, you know, that was kind of hard within itself. And so when I did, you know, I was going to go to Ohio State University. But when I did, you know, when they weren't giving enough money and everything else, I made the conscious decision. And I ended up at Morehouse. And when I tell you, for me, it was one of the best experiences in the world because I learned so much about me just as a young Black man. And we were talking about earlier, you know, we got militant at times because you think you're going in, you're gonna get, you know, you're gonna get you're going to learn how to do this and do that. But you also learn, listen, you can't tell me so much about my Blackness because then I'm going to really start becoming that thing. And so, you know, I groomed and that's why it made it so important for me to, when I started teaching and started going and working in the school system, I said, I can't work anywhere but with children who look like me. Like, I have to make sure that those young people, you know, understand who they are. And that's why I believe it's so important. And it's interesting why people don't feel the necessity to preserve our institutions. So the 2-part question I have for you is, why is it important to preserve our HBCUs? And what did the experience of going to an HBCU do for you?
It's important because we should. I mean, and it's a simple answer, but it is our responsibility to ensure that our cultural heritage and our institutions of importance are sustained and promoted. That is our responsibility. We do the same for our churches. We do the same for our families. It is no one else's responsibility to ensure our institutions are able to make it. Mm-hmm. And so I get concerned often when I hear, people say they won't give to HBCUs, or even like the guest here. I get this a lot, that going to some other institution will give a better status in life. When the reality is HBCUs enroll a significantly low number of Black students. However, the graduation rates are higher than any institutions in the country. So, we need to look at those things. And so going to Morehouse allowed me for the first time to see Black males who were smart, and it was okay. So I was highly intelligent, not to sound arrogant, but I was highly intelligent for most of my life. But I had to dumb down my intelligence so that I would not be harassed, so that I was not called a nerd. And so when I got to Morehouse, it was very interesting to me that being smart was popular. And everyone on the campus was trying to be smarter than everyone else. And to see that among Black males was a complete culture shock for me. And to have all of these Black males in leadership and teaching, I didn't have my first Black male teacher until I was in high school. And I had three. One taught physics, one taught English, and one taught Spanish. But prior to that, I had never had a Black male teacher. So the entire experience gave me a level of confidence that when I left there, I could go into white spaces and be okay. Because I did not graduate with any experience or understanding of being inferior. I understood that I know what I know. And when I go into spaces, I can be Black, male, and intelligent, speak for my people, but also understand what's going on in the space. And I don't think if I had gone to another institution that I would be as confident in many ways as I am.
And as young people are making these decisions, and a lot of them who are some of the parents now, I actually have Shelly actually has a high school senior who attends South Atlanta High School right now. And I believe Shelly, he is settled on the institution. I believe he chose a HBCU to attend over many other schools. And I was very happy about that, by the way. But there are so many young people who are walking right now and who are trying to figure out what they're going to do. And there's so many young people who may be watching right now and they're struggling because of the fact that, they're torn between what my family's saying. Maybe I should go here, especially if it's not, lineage or legacy, right? If it's not my family went to HBCU, for many of those families, it's like, all right, cool. That's where you're going for the most part. Then you have the families who say, well, if my money's going, you're going where my money's going. Then you have some families, who, because education has not been fully prevalent in their home, it's hard. What would be the one thing you would say to that young person who may not have had that, whose family, that's just not what they know, and that's not where they are? What would you say to that particular young person on how they can maneuver through this process to making the best decision for them?
So let me say I was one of those young people, and although it was a while ago, I was one. All of my mother's 5 degrees are from PWIs. My dad went to community college for a while, but he had to work, so he withdrew. So I was one of those people whose parents did not have a point of reference for HBCUs. But I was fortunate that the choir director, who's my godmother, Nina Scott at Renaissance, talked to my parents. Because my parents were dead set against me giving up a full ride to this PWI to go to an institution where I'd be trying to figure out how to pay for it. And so after the conversation with her, they allowed me to go on a Black college tour. At that time we had these tours. We didn't have all this internet stuff. So you got on that bus for a week in all these places. But I would say there are a few points. One, you need to go somewhere that you are going to be happy being. Because, one of my areas of expertise is enrollment. And we have a number of students that quit because they hate where they are. They hate the institution. They don't have enough support. It's great that many of our PWIs have these Black student unions now, but that is not the same as being culturally inclusive in the entire campus. So, and you need to go somewhere and you need to try to have a conversation with your parents or bring in an advocate. I have spoken to many students' parents that I have never met because I'm data driven. And most parents, if you present the data to them, the success data and the rigor data, then they'll be okay. You know, and the challenge a lot of our young people are facing now is that we have a majority of our students whose parents didn't even go to college. So the first conversation is the relevance of college, because, you know, everybody's on this entrepreneur kick right now. I'm an entrepreneur. It is not easy. And if we focus all of our young people on those careers, what we're not going to have is any Black doctors, any Black lawyers, any Black people doing this research, because you can't just walk into a courtroom and say, I'm going to defend this person, I'm the defense attorney. And so if we keep shifting all of our students away from higher ed, then we are going to have a gap internally in our culture.
And it's interesting you say that, because of the fact, and I want to give a shout out, because it's something about, for some reason, those choral teachers, because it was my chorus teacher who talked me into going to an HBCU. So it was Garnetta Penn at Mays High School. So she was like, listen, you know, you need to go here. She was like, you're going to Clarkland University. And Dr. Mr. Halsey at the time was the choral director. He said, you're going to be in the Philharmonic Society. You're going to get there. And then from there, you know, I started auditioning for places like Jackson State, because I was also able to play piano and play trumpet. And so, you know, I was, you know, she taught me how to, because that was also my family. I didn't come from a long line of college graduates. That's just not what we had. Some here or there, and none of them went to an HBCU. My uncle played football at the University of Arkansas, and then went to the Air Force. And a lot of my family was military. And so they weren't really college, they were military. And so not having that, you know, we just kind of knew what I knew. And again, I was on my way to Ohio State because that's what I knew. That's what we know. Not even realizing, and that's another thing, not even realizing that I had one of the oldest HBCUs and, you know, there I had Wilberforce, you know, not even realizing that I had Central State there. I had Wilberforce. I had I was in the bubble of close HBCUs. And so not having that experience. So with that, I kind of want to take that back with that though, and talk about those HBCU experiences. You know, my background obviously was K-12. And so, you know, now, you know, there are teachers and there are educators who are moving more towards highlighting and showcasing, you know, where they went to school and things of that nature. How do we get that how do we get those conversations deeper into K-12? How do we get those counselors who weren't necessarily HBCU? Because I know your story about your counselor, and I really want them to hear that story as well, because of the fact that there's so many people who are in these systems who are unfortunately the hindrance of our young people. And so how do we get the proper people in those areas, but for those we can't get them in, how do we change the narrative in that K-12 system, particularly the high school system, to getting those young people possibly looking more at HBCUs? And then, of course, in that process, tell your counselor story.
Okay, so I'm going to be slightly direct. Mm-hmm. I think the way we do it is to stop letting ignorant people lead our young people. And then that's the case. I have so many students that I work with whose counselors tell them that they're going to receive an inferior education in HBCU. Why would you give up this opportunity to go to a PWI when to go to an HBCU when you have this wonderful opportunity to go to a PWI? That is ignorant. We cannot continue as a people to degrade and demean our own resources. And we see that just across the board, you know, this mindset that, you know, if another demographic says something, then it must be true. That's not the case. And so we have to start shifting that narrative and stop allowing people to discourage our people. I'm dealing with 2 young Black males now who went through what I went through, and I'm glad you mentioned it. You know, with the counselor telling me I wasn't college material and I should consider trade school. You know, and when I went through my Ph.D. program, I got to send her a nice little letter on my stationery with all my letters after it and my corporate logo, because she thought I would be better tuned to a technical field because I was not academic material. And I'm dealing with two young Black males that are similar. One is an athlete, but he doesn't want to go to college for sports. He wants to go to college to be an engineer and is an exceptional math person, but the people are trying to discourage him from doing that and going to the school he wants so that he can play football. Wonderful. And if that's what he wants to do, I will support that. You will get an education and you can be an athlete. But that's not what he wants to do. And so I think that we need to, as a community, and that parents need to get more involved, and the people in the community who are engaged and interact with these schools to stop some of these ignorant people from discouraging our young people. And it's not just males. There are a lot of young Black girls who are told that they should not study certain things because of their gender. That is ignorance. And I think we just need to stop allowing these ignorant, unqualified people in these spaces to lead the next generation.
And,
yeah, exactly.
and it's so sad that, we have that because, you run into, unfortunately, many young people, the school is that haven to get away from the negativity and the ignorance that's possibly going on at home, and the beat down and the turmoil at home. And then you get to an institution where you believe it's supposed to be your safe haven, and those same individuals are telling you, you're not going to be, and you can't do, and that becomes an issue. I want to answer this question before we go to another break, so you can all learn a little bit more about the Woodson and Associates. But I want to ask this question right here, where it says, how does a single mom continue with the support when peer pressure and media are stronger in voice?
Okay, so I'm not trying to be sexist. Males listen to males, and that's just the nature of it. When we get to a certain age, there's all this data that says by 8th grade, we have decided what we're going to do. And so that's why I think it's so important for our Black males who are doing things successfully to help our single mothers by steering some of these boys, because peer pressure is no joke. And we discount it, but we have students committing suicide because of peer pressure now with this bullying and cyberbullying. And so I think what we need to do as a community is help our mothers. Now, that's not go take over the raising of their children, and unfortunately, that happens too often. But to provide the support, I mentor, like I said, 45 young men, and they are not all here in Atlanta. I work with their parents to make sure they're on target, and we are collectively ensuring these young people's success. But I don't think as Black males we do a good job. We want to tell people how to raise their children, and that's not really effective because you wouldn't let anybody come in your house and do that. But we can collectively work. There are programs for young males. I am so excited. So many of our HBCUs now have these Call Me Mr. programs that also work with high schoolers. And so anybody can always reach me, and I will do whatever I can to provide resources.
And there are and we'll make sure we will make sure that his information you'll get at the end. But we also want to, for a moment, show you just a little bit about what he does and what Woodson Associates does, so you can kind of get a better understanding and get information. So we're going to take a quick break so you can actually learn just a little bit more about. It's not a whole lot, just a little bit about what Woodson Associates does, and then of course.
But feel free to go to the website.
Right, go to the website. But it's just enough information for you to wet your palate so that you can find out about Woodson Associates. We'll be right back after this. We're currently live on PickEd Speaks. We'll be right back.
PickEd Speaks. We'll be right back.
Are your students ready to succeed in today's changing environment? The necessity for innovative educational consulting is here, and Woodson and Associates, we're ready to help. You can provide state-of-the-art diversity and educational leadership. Your students will always have the resources needed to succeed with Woodson and Associates.
All right, so we are back. So please make sure that you are going to Woodson and Associates to learn a little bit more about what they do, because actually he has so many things that he does and he provides to the community. I mean, you're talking about, they talk about financial aid, how to actually, and we're actually going to talk about that briefly in a second. We talk about financial aid. We talk about what it takes to make that extra oomph to that essay. We talk about, choosing the right majors, choosing the right school, making sure that you understand, and this is another thing I love. They talk about, and this is something that I was going to bring up. They talk about making sure you go where's best for you, not where's best for everybody else. And so I want to make sure I am addressing the parents that are on this screen or on this live who are watching. Please make sure that you're listening to your young people. Let those young people go to the institution where they feel that they will be best suited, making sure that they are comfortable. It ain't, well, you're going to go where I go. No, you got to make sure that you allow those young people to, because they're going to be ones going to the institution.
And
wonder why you take out these loans and everything else. You took all this money out, and then when they find out they don't want to go there anymore, and now you've wasted a year, where they could have actually been somewhere where they wanted to go.
And I just want to, before we go on, I want to acknowledge my new intern from Morehouse, Tyrese Goldsby, who did that commercial for our company. And so that is just some of the stuff that our young people can do at our schools.
Right. And it's like you and I love the fact also that we and when we talk about Black history, we talk about HBCUs. The great thing about us is we're so diverse in many areas. People pigeonhole, and they put, again, people who go to HBCUs in certain boxes. Immediately when people think about Morehouse, they think you're automatically a preacher, not realizing there's more to Morehouse than just preachers. They actually, even though they didn't necessarily have a school of education, there were quite a few teachers that came out of there because there was a consortium that was there in the AUC, that if in essence that you didn't necessarily have the institute, the program there, you can go to Spelman and you can go to Clark, and vice versa.
And Morehouse now is producing many of our engineers, scientists, and people who are running these Fortune 500 companies. Morehouse's business program is no joke. Mm-hmm. And I was reconnected with Dr. Belinda White a few months ago, who's written a major leadership book, who was there when I was in school. And the course that she and then Ms. McLaurin taught, Leadership and Professional Development Seminar, prepared me for going out to the corporate world. And I sometimes am concerned that we don't do enough in that transition, preparing our young people to leave the theoretical study and move into tangible, active work. And Morehouse did an amazing job of that. Now, sometimes I didn't like it. And I have to be honest, sometimes I wanted to leave me alone. But I'm glad that they pushed me, because it also allowed me to realize that all I could achieve.
Mm-hmm. And you think about, again, all the other schools where people go, and you think about law, you think about things of that nature. Well, you don't necessarily just have to go to Harvard Law and Yale Law. Let's be very mindful. Not only did we have a Supreme Court justice who went to a law school that so happened to sit on, there was a Black man, we actually now have a vice president who went to an HBCU, wasn't necessarily the law school, but went to an HBCU. So Howard has produced amazing. When you think about aeronautics, you start thinking about that. You think about Tuskegee, and you think about things of that nature. We think about engineering. You think about North Carolina A&T. When you think about agriculture.
Even with medicine, we have 3 Howard, Meharry, and Morehouse School of Medicine that are training people. And it's interesting that if you look at those schools and those programs, the diversity, which says that other people are starting to understand the importance of our schools more than we are. Morehouse School of Medicine, they graduate so many diverse ethnicities and demographics that it is amazing to me. Yeah. And so other people are starting to value the importance of our schools, sometimes at our own detriment.
Yeah, and when doing that, there's sometimes where our young people, they don't always, our young people don't always set themselves up for success in the best way possible, not because they don't have the ability, but sometimes they just don't have the understanding of how they can get there. So The final two questions, or the final little discussion I want to have with you is this. You know, a lot of young people have this misconception of what college is before they get there and when they get there. And sometimes they underestimate, if you will, what it takes to actually get there. Really quickly, can you discuss with us kind of some of the, you know, being someone who was on the side of entry, you know, when students are trying to get in, have to look at essays and having to listen to interviews. What are some of the misconceptions and some of the mistakes our young people make before they even step foot on the campus, or before they even get an opportunity to come to the campus?
Well, the major one is preparing and starting too late. You should not be preparing and starting to go to your college process in your senior year. It's really too late. I suggest people start thinking about that in their sophomore year, definitely in their junior year. Money at institutions is given out early. And once it's gone, many institutions don't have anymore. So if you're going to need scholarships, be that athletic scholarships, academic, whatever, you need to start that process early. The other thing is, do not submit documents with errors on them. Most schools receive more applications than the students they would ever be able to admit. And so when there are challenges and things, that push you into another pile. You want to have an application that is so good that they're like, oh, well, we want this student. And then most schools will work with you. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, if you are having issues, like I always use this transcript issue, if your grades are concerning or you don't think they're up to par, if they allow you to write a statement, address that in your statement. Explain what happened. Sometimes it's like family trauma or injury or death. Put that out there. I always tell people, air your dirty laundry first and don't let anybody come find it so they can use it against you later. Mm-hmm. But your grades are important, and whatever anybody tells you, you know, all these things about your full packet and all of that, that's wonderful. But at the end of the day, the number one factor are your grades. Because right now, because of COVID, many schools aren't even requiring ACT and SAT scores. So what other data do they have to use? That transcript, your grades. Do well in your classes. You cannot correct bad grades after a certain point. You can't, in your junior year, have a 1.9 and then say, well, my senior year, I'm going to get all these high grades and I'll have a 3.0. That's not possible. The math does not work. So those are some of the things that, you know, people need to focus on. And bring your parents into the process. Don't exclude your parents from your college selection process.
And it's very key. So the last question, the very, very last question I have for you is, when we think about where we are, and this is the culmination of the whole conversation of today. When we talk about where we are as, you know, just in general, where, you know, when it comes to Black history, when it comes about us in essence, what would be the one thing that you would want to leave if you had to leave here tomorrow? If you left this earth tomorrow, what would be the one thing that you would want to say as it pertains to where we are as a people and what you want to see for us moving forward?
I would really like to see us unify and do the work as a community. I was inspired this past summer with the Black Lives Matter movement, because the diversity of the people out there was empowering. But we can't, and I just said this the other day on my show, we can't continue to wait for a movement. Mm-hmm. Like, we need policy change. We need to make substantial changes in our culture to push our people forward. And, you know, Carter G. Woodson has a quote that, and I'll summarize it, just says, you know, Negroes, and that's what we were called then, cannot expect to move forward if we are relying on the hand of our oppressors to feed us. We have to unify and push our own society forward. I grew up in a Jewish city. I am impressed with the way that the Jewish community works for themselves, promotes their culture, it's ingrained in their daily lives, have businesses, ensure that their communities, not just their nuclear family, but that the community has the resources it needs to be effective. And I think that would be the thing I would leave with. We have to move beyond just looking at ourselves and our family and our home and seeing how we can impact in a positive way our community in general.
Well, listen, we can go and we can talk forever. We'll probably talk more after this, but we know that, again, I'm just thankful that we were able to have you. As you can see, I am being interrupted by my dog. This is again becoming a norm, unfortunately, on many of these lives. So I do apologize for that. But please tell the people how they can actually reach you.
Okay, so the easiest way is my website, rwaynewoodson.com. The links to all of my companies and programs are there. Anything you need is on that website. And then the company website is WoodsonASSOC.com. The best way to reach me is always email. I get a lot of phone calls and I'm often not able to answer the phone. But if you send me an email, I am quick, and DeAndre will tell you, I would respond to an email in the middle of the night. But those are two ways to reach me. And then on your screen, Dr. Woodson 2020, that is my handle, my name on all social media. So if you type it in Instagram, YouTube, all of those, that handle will get you to me.
And please make sure that you're following us on all of our social media outlets under PickEd Speaks Live. Then we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're now on LinkedIn. So we're being watched via live on LinkedIn right now. So thank you all so much. You can also follow me on all of my platforms, including the website, which is the same as the handle, I am Dr. Pickett. You can go to www.iamdrpickett.com. If for any reason you would like to join us right here on PickEd Speaks, or you would like to actually be a sponsor, or even like to have your business or your products advertised, you can actually do that right there. Scroll to the bottom of the screen at inspire@iamdrpickett.com. Again, inspire@iamdrpickett.com. Listen, I have enjoyed you, sir. Thank you so much for being with us.
Anything for you, and everybody can't say that.
Say it again.
Anything for you, and everybody can't say that.
Listen, thank you for joining us, and thank you for watching. And for those who are watching by replay, thank you so much. Listen, if you want to do a recap with me, we do a recap every Tuesday. Yes, we do a recap tomorrow, every Tuesday at 12:45 p.m. because we do another broadcast at 1 o'clock. We do a replay at 1 o'clock on Tuesday. So please join me tomorrow at 12:45 for a quick recap of this discussion and just what we may have. I may catch some questions after we log off. So some of you may actually reach out to us afterwards and may have some questions that didn't get answered. And so I want to make sure we do those recaps. So again, join me right here and on LinkedIn and all other social media outlets at 12:45 tomorrow for another episode of our recap. Join us next week as we begin our series of what we do on fourth Mondays. We'll have what we call as a Man, as a Woman Thinketh. So you'll be introduced to our new panel. Will be a new panel of individuals every fourth Monday to join me to discuss just topics that happen over the course of the month, or just things that are going on in our country, or just things we want to talk about. And you'll hear from a men perspective and a women perspective. We did this somewhat last season, and now it's going to be a regular staple on fourth Monday. So please join us. If you have questions, if there's things you want to discuss, still send it to that same email as well at inspire@iamdrpickett.com. Until we meet again, I am Dr. D, and this is PickEd Speaks, where Black excellence speaks for itself. God bless you and good night.
Thank you for watching PickEd Speaks, where Black excellence speaks for itself.